خاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. Brothers and sisters, for the benefit of all of the marhumin and marhumat and your marhumin and marhumat, and in particular Mirza Muhammad Qasim and Mirza Abdul Jawad and Mir Alam Ali Khan and Mir Subhan Ali and Hajra Begum and Gohar Sultan and Bilqis Begum, let's send them all the thawab of Surah Al-Fatiha, please. We've gathered here on this evening, which is the evening of the 26th of Muharram. The occasion which has brought us together is the martyrdom of Imam Alibn and Hussein Zain al-Abidin, which we commemorated last night and today. And in honor of this event and as a way of commemorating it, we are inshallah here for this purpose, and we hope that this gathering is a source of pleasure to Allah and a source of pleasure to the Imam of our time, Ajalallahu Farajahu Sharif. Last night I began the topic of looking at the spirituality of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam. Imam Sajad alayhi salam is somebody who is famous for being a very spiritual figure, a'badun nas, in the view of all Muslims. Anyone who came to know him, they knew that he was very special. He was very inspiring. He was very devout, and his very presence, his speech, his movements were something that everyone would take notice of, and they were inspired, especially those who understood his position as being the descendant and the representative of Allah on the earth at that time. So what we talked about yesterday was that this Imam alayhi salam, we have such treasures from him, stories about his life, his precious words in the form of the du'as and the munajat. Let's try to see what is the special quality of his spirituality. Yesterday we looked at the concept of attachment and how Imam Sajjad alayhi salam was very, very attached to Allah, and one of his biggest concerns is that something should happen in his life that would make him turn to somebody else and try to find an attachment to somebody other than him, than Allah. And in his du'as we see this as being a concern of his. Allahumma ja'alni asulu bika inda darura, the one we talked about yesterday. And he says that whenever any haja comes, any need arises, I want to be just connected to you. The attachment to Allah was something that was very precious to Imam Ali ibn Hussein, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. And we looked at some of the ayat of the Quran which explain to us why is it that somebody would want to attach themselves to Allah. He is the one who is the protector. He is the one who is always there to respond. He is the one who is very powerful, very capable. And it was on this basis that Imam alayhi salam chooses Allah to be the one that he's so attached to. Now tonight I want to look at a different aspect of the spirituality of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, and I want to first begin again by saying something giving a bit of a critique about modern spirituality. And when I do that, I have to say that in one sense it's admirable for somebody to be looking into developing their spirituality, even if it's from a different approach. Why? Because there are people who are so drowned in the dunya, and they're so obsessed with everything to do with like the worldly accomplishments that they don't even take time out to interrupt that flow. They're just completely, they're not willing to even spend a few minutes away from that. Every moment they have, it's either they're pursuing the dunya or they are entertaining themselves with the dunya, or they are forcefully resting themselves from the dunya. And that's pretty much like their whole day. And it's these people who are those who, there's just no time in their life that's dedicated towards developing anything but any connection to anything but the dunya. So at least we have this revival, this movement, and it's actually something that there's no other choice, because we human beings have not been created to be imprisoned in the dunya. We need an outlet. We need to be able to escape from it. So you find these modern forms of spirituality, they at least have this concept in there that we need to get out. Now, one of the features of the modern form of spirituality is that it's very much something which is driven by like an on-demand thing. Like it's kind of like, Netflix, right? You have a show that you want to watch, so you can choose that show. You can watch it when you want to watch it. You don't have to watch the commercials. Back in the days, that's not the way that entertainment media used to work. You'd have to wait. Maybe you're waiting the whole year for your show to come on, and then you get it. Or you have to go to the store to get some physical cassette to bring home, and then you put it into that machine, and then you can watch whatever you want to watch. Now it's like on demand, instant. So spirituality is kind of like that as well too. I'm doing my thing, I'm engaged in, I'm studying, I'm working, I'm whatever, and then I'm going to press the button, instant on. I get my spiritual dose. I can put the time in, however much time I want to spend with it, and then I'm out. Right? I got it, alhamdulillah, I'm done. Okay, now I can move on with the rest of my life. That's kind of sometimes the mentality behind the modern form of spirituality. But one of the things we see in the life and the words of Imam Sajad alayhi salam is a different approach, a fundamentally different approach. What is that approach? It's one where the Imam alayhi salam is showing us that one of the ways of attaining true spirituality is by not just that you do certain things, but that you avoid certain things as well. And this is something which is a very simple thing, but it's something that's being forgotten in the modern world. And I'll give you the example of health. Right? Health, traditionally speaking, if we go back into ancient wisdom, how was somebody healthy? Right? They would be healthy by observing certain habits and lifestyle that would prevent them from getting sick in the first place. So they're very particular about, for example, making sure that they got enough exercise. They were very particular about making sure that they would have time for their mind to rest. They would be very particular about getting enough sleep. They would be very particular about, how they make sure that they get out, they have fresh air and whatnot, because they knew that good health is a combination of not only what you take in, but also what you keep out. And there's a sort of sense of like having not just health in the form of a pill, not just health in the form of like, okay, when I get sick, then I'm gonna go to the doctors, they're gonna give me that pill, but rather in the form of observing certain life principles that would keep that sickness away. And that was something that, and now you find that there's a return to this type of thinking, right? Because people are realizing that if we don't do that, then especially with the modern lifestyle, it's going to kill us. Now, similarly, when it comes to spirituality, there are certain things that Imam Sajad alayhi salam says that if you want to attain true spirituality, you have to keep away from these things. And for us, when we're observing this, we're trying to learn from this Imam, maybe for us to realize, the essence of what he had, it's something which maybe is beyond us, because it's like we read the stories and I'm like, I don't get it. I don't understand what is it that he was experiencing that made him like that. And some of the stories I gave yesterday, I'll mention a couple of stories today. But what we can understand, what is at our level, is at least what is it that he says, stay away from these things. These are your preventative measures. And if you do that, then you're in a better position to be able to attain what you're looking for. And I have to say that, we're very blessed, alhamdulillah. Like, I thank Allah that we have the example of these types of individuals, these role models, right? Where they really, anybody, even if you take somebody who has no background in Islam, but they start to read about these type of people, there's something inside of them which says that, this is the person I want to be like. You can bring examples of gurus and I don't know, inspiring spiritual figures and spiritual influencers and whatnot, and you can take some things from them, but it's very hard to find individuals who in all aspects they got it right, and that's what we have in the example of the Imams alayhim salam. So inshallah I want to give some examples of the things that the Imam said stay away from them, about 3 of them, and inshallah you can help me with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There's a very beautiful dua that the Imam alayhi salam, Imam Sajad alayhi salam, has given, that he himself recited on the day of Arafah, the day of dua. Right? So if you want to see like what is the essence of the Imam's entreating when he's asking Allah, then you look at this dua, because this is the day of dua that he's making this dua. And he says in that dua, وَهَبْ لِي عِصْمَةً تُدْنِينِي مِنْ خَشْيَتِكَ وَتَقْطَعَنِي عَنْ رُكُوبِ مَحَارِمِكَ وَتَفُكَّنِي مِنْ أَسْرِ الْعَظَائِمِ وَهَبْ لِي التَّطْهِيرَ مِنْ دَنَسِ الْعِصْيَانِ وَأَذْهِبْ عَلَيَّ دَرَنَ الْخَطَايَا. What the Imam ﷺ is asking Allah for is an isma here. Now we know that the Imam was a ma'asum, but here the isma that he's talking about is not the isma that we read about in theology, this isma that the Imams and the Prophets are given by birth, they have to have that. But rather it means the literal meaning of it, which is a protection. So he's asking Allah to grant him a protection from khataya, a protection from dhunub, a protection from transgressions, those things that would be considered sins. But why? Because he says that if I were to get this isma, isma would be something, of course he had it, he's describing what he has. Tudnini min khashyatik. It's something which brings me closer to this element of spirituality called khashya. Okay, so this is key, right? This is one of those very practical things. This is like we're trying to understand what is the spirituality of Imam Sajad alayhi salam. So he has something called khashya of Allah. And he's saying that the key to it is being protected from sin, which means that if you take the opposite of it, somebody who sins, somebody who transgresses and they engage in haram, what they're doing is they're breaking that ability to have the khashya. Now, what is this khashya? Khashya is a very hard word to translate into English. One of the ways we can try to look at it, we can say that, okay, the definitions say that it's something which is a type of fear which is developed when you really revere somebody, like you really, really care about somebody so much that the last thing that you can imagine is that you would do something that would maybe divert that person's care from you. Right? You don't want to do anything that would lower you in that person's eyes. So you have like this type of khashya. Right? Sometimes people translate it as a reverence based on love, or a fear that's mixed with love. That's one way of understanding it. The other way of understanding it is by looking at the examples. Like how is it manifested in the life of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam. So one of the things famous incidents that you've heard about before, it's reported in the books of the Ahlul Sunnah as well, that the Imam alayhi salam is going for Hajj. And now he wants to enter into the state of ihram. Sometimes people who haven't gone for Hajj, they haven't, let's say, been aware of the rules. They think that, okay, if I want to enter the state of ihram, it's a matter of wearing the clothes, right? But you know that wearing the clothes is part of it, right? And it's not, maybe in some circumstances it's not even necessary, depending, for example, if you're male, female, whatnot, in terms of what actually is worn at that time. Anyhow, what is the real entering the ihram? It's the talbiyah. Right? It's the declaration that's saying that labbaik Allahumma labbaik, I am here. Now when everyone was there, they're all excited, they're ready to perform the Hajj, they're like labbaik Allahumma labbaik, and those of you who have been for Hajj, you know that it's a time of great excitement. Everyone is like joyously, anxiously, very eagerly, they're responding to the call, saying, Lord, I'm here, and may Allah Ta'ala grant us all that opportunity to perform the Hajj. But they saw that Imam Sajjad alayhi salam wasn't saying the labbaik. Instead, they saw that he was trembling. He was shaking. And there were some, maybe, who, you find this in the history of the Imams, there's some like sort of people who kind of thought that like they're know-it-alls, right? So they go to the Imam and they say that, you have to recite the talbiyah in order to enter into the state of ihram. Like as if, they're trying to teach the teachers, right? And unfortunately, they didn't understand the maqam of Imam Sajad alayhi salam. So finally, the reports say that, and one of the reports is from Imam Malik, the one who is the head of the Maliki madhab of the Ahlul Sunnah, said that when Imam alayhi salam finally said labbaik, immediately he fainted and he fell from his horse. And then for the rest of the Hajj pilgrimage, he was in a different state altogether. And they asked him, they said that, what is it that prevented you from saying labbaik? And he says that, I am in the presence of my Lord, and I have a type of fear that what if I were to say labbaik and he says to me, la labbaik, I'm saying to him, I am ready, I am here, my Lord, and he says that, no, you're not ready, you're not here for me, you're here for something else. And it is this fear that kept me from actually bringing the words to my tongue. And finally, when I said them, then this is what happened. That was in Hajj. We have examples of in Salah, where Imam Sajad alayhi salam once again is seen trembling. He's quivering, he's shaking. The color of his skin has changed. One time, Abu Hamza al-Thumali, the great companion, he says that I saw that the Imam had like the aba and the aba slips, and I asked him afterwards, I said that you didn't fix your aba. And he says, don't you know who I'm standing in front of? I was so busy with this, how could I attend to this right here? Don't you know that that amount of our prayers is accepted, that Allah accepts? So he's busy in the presence of Allah. He's having this type of awareness, this mindfulness of the presence of Allah. And Abu Hamza al-Thumali says that if that's the case, then we're gone. Right? So the Imam alayhi comforts him. He says that, well, that's what you have the nawafil for. Right? That's why you have all these extra things that you can do to make up and compensate for what you miss out in your prayer. Now, what is this khashya? Like again, we read these things, we know that the Imam has it. One thing we can understand is that this aspect of the Imam's spirituality, it is a type of fear. It does involve shaking. It does involve fright, but it also involves incredible spiritual pleasure. And this is very important for us to realize. Like, why is it that somebody gives every ounce of their energy and their time to something? Like, what is it that spurs them to that? Would they do that if they didn't enjoy it? Even if you ask, like, for example, a mother who's raising her children, let's say, and she's like, from even throughout the night, and then from the morning to the evening, right? Let's say that she has some children, young children who are really like on her, really need her attention. And she gives every ounce of effort. And when she goes to bed, she's so exhausted, she just like almost like drops dead. Right? Why is it that she goes through? It seems like it's painful. It seems like it's a big job, right? And sometimes people look at it like, no, I don't want anything to do with that. Right? But if you go and ask her, and you say that, why are you doing this? It's like she said that, yeah, it's difficult for sure. Yes, it's hard. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. Nothing. Because that type of sense of accomplishment, that sense of, duty that I get from this, that feeling of like, becoming somebody who's mature as a result of this is more important and more rewarding than all those other pains that I would go through. So the Imam ﷺ would worship, and his son Imam Muhammad Baqir says that sometimes my father would worship until the point that he'd be doing sujood, al-Sajjad, Sayyid al-Sajidin, and then he'd be worshiping to the point where when he would want to go to his bed, he wouldn't be able to get up. He would have to just crawl to his bed, as we have in hadith. Right? And for us, again, we're not saying that this is the way we need to be, because the Imam ﷺ has a different sort of status, right? But that trouble that he's taking, that fear that he's feeling, it also comes with incredible spiritual pleasure. So this is one of the aspects that Imam ﷺ himself is describing. He says that, I want this isma from you, O Allah. The way to get this khashya is by getting this isma, by staying away from that sinfulness. So one of those preventative measures is exactly that. right? If we're looking for true spirituality, not the one that's the instant one, not the one that's just temporary, not the one that's just limited to physical sort of pleasure, not the one that's self-centered, the one that's real, the one that gives us real attachment to the one who we're supposed to be attached to, that we already are attached to, but gives us that awareness of that attachment, then we need to be engaged in this type of worship, which involves staying away from sins. Please recite salawat. Brothers and sisters, the second thing that Imam al-Islam mentions, again, it's from the same dua. He says, وَانْزَعْ مِنْ قَلْبِي حُبَّ دُنْيًا دَنِيَّةً تَنْهَى عَمَّا عِنْدَكَ وَتَصُدُّ عَنِ ابْتِغَاءِ الْوَسِيلَةِ إِلَيْكَ وَتَذْهَلُ عَنِ التَّقَرُّبِ مِنْكَ. It's very beautiful. The Imam al-Islam says that there are certain things that there's a journey that I'm supposed to take, which is supposed to be a journey of taqarrub. Taqarrub meaning getting closer and closer to you, true spirituality. But what is it that keeps me away from that? What is it that distracts me from it? It's hubba dunyan daniya. It's love of the low dunya, the lowly material world. And the Imam al-Islam was very emphatic about this. He was somebody, of course, we know that all the Imams, they were involved with the dunya. They didn't run away from it. They used to make money, enough money to be able to give that money to others. They used to have families. They used to enjoy themselves in halal ways. They used to live a balanced life. But they also were very careful that as they're engaging in all these beautiful creations of God, they're making use of everything that God gave us to carry out their affairs. They were very careful that their use of the dunya was for the akhirah, not for the dunya itself. And there's one time when the Imam al-Islam is very beautiful. The Imam al-Islam saw there was a beggar who was crying over his condition. And I'm sure that the Imam went and helped him, because that's the nature of the Imam. But he was crying over his condition, and the Imam al-Islam wanted to draw a lesson from that. So he told his companions, he says that here he is, he's crying over his condition. But I would say that if the situation was that he had been given the entire dunya and then he had lost it, it would not be worth crying as much as he's crying right now. Now just think about that, right? MashaAllah, our community is tech savvy. They're into financial sort of literacy, right? Imagine that all your Bitcoin investments, all your cryptocurrency, all your stocks, right? All your options, all your pension plans and your retirement and your bank accounts. There was a hacker who came and it was gone, right? And the SEC said that no, we're not going to support you in this case. You're all on your own, right? And Imam al-Islam says that even whatever that beggar is crying is not even worth it, right? That's not worth shedding tears over. He would say that somebody who, the mark, he says that the value of somebody is, say salawat, please. He says, أَعْظَمُ النَّاسِ خَطَرًا مَنْ لَمْ يَرَ الدُّنْيَا خَطَرًا لِنَفْسِهِ. It's very beautiful. He says that if you want to know who the most valuable of people are, it's the one who doesn't see the dunya as a marker for his own value. Meaning that go ahead, engage in the dunya. Right? Do what you got to do, but don't think that that's what is the most important thing for you. That's not what it's about. We know that one of the things that can take away spirituality from somebody is when they get attracted to the dunya, when it becomes like an object of desire themselves, in and of itself. We're told, there's a story that's told. I don't know if it's a true story or not, but it's mentioned that one of the prophets, Nabi Shu'aib alayhi salam, he was once walking, you've heard the story, he was walking and he was going to engage in special munajat with Allah, and along the way he meets this one man who's like a sinner. And he recognized him. He says, "You're the prophet of God." He said, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to special munajat with Allah." So he says, "Can you pass a message to God for me?" "Sure. I am somebody who's frequently engaging in sin, but nothing's happened to me. I'm good, right? I haven't had any, piece of sky fall on me and crush me. I haven't had, a lightning bolt strike me. I haven't lost all my money. My kids and my family, they're still alive, right? What's going on here, right? I thought that it's supposed to be the case that, when you go towards the dunya, then bad stuff is supposed to happen to you. So Nabi Dawood alayhi salam, according to the story, he goes and he engages in munajat and he conveys the message, and God gives him a message back again. So on the way back, he meets this young man, and he tells him that Allah's message to you is a simple message. He said, yeah, okay, you're engaged in all these things, but I have one question for you. When is the last time that you enjoyed having conversation with me? Right? And that man, it was a question for him. And he realized that, he didn't have that enjoyment anymore. It had been stolen from his heart, taken away from his heart. It's supposed to be there. It's part of our fitrah. Why would Allah create us in a way that we don't enjoy talking to Him? He's supposed to be the object of all of our desire. One day, all these other things will be taken away from us. And then it's just us, our deeds, and Allah. It's there, but it can be clouded. It can be taken away. So love of the dunya is something that the Imam alayhi salam said, this is something which is very careful. You have to watch yourself. How is it that you interact with all these things? The Imam says in this line from the dua, he says, "O Allah, take away from my heart love of that dunya, which prevents me amma indak." It's so beautiful. It prevents me from that which is indak. Indak means, something which is with Allah, in the court of Allah. You know that story of the lady Asiya in the Quran, where she's the wife of Fir'aun. She has the dunya. She's the queen of an entire kingdom. Everything she wants from dunya is with her, but she keeps herself pure. She has love of the wali of Allah in her heart, and at the end of her life, what is her request from Allah? She said, "Rabbi ibni li indaka baytan fil jannah." Oh Allah, oh my Lord, I want to be in Jannah, but what's more important to me above anything else is indak. There's something in Allah, right? There's something with Allah. In the Quran, Allah Ta'ala, He describes different rewards. He says that, okay, there's rivers, there's this, there's that. He talks about rizq, right? Rizq coming from the skies, from the earth. But then He talks about a certain class of rewards that are in the law, right? And sometimes He just left at that. There's something with Allah. That's the spirituality that we're looking for, brothers and sisters, right? It's what gives the believer something where they have it and other people, they can't even describe to them. Here, we're trying to understand from Imam Sajad alayhi salam, we just see glimpses, right? But what he has is something that is undescribable. فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَتْ لَهُم مِّن قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ جَزَاءً بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. That no soul even, Allah doesn't, He says that, He says that, no one can even understand what is waiting for the people who dedicate themselves to Allah. It's something that it can't even be put into like words that people will understand. This is true spirituality. And the last thing I'll mention that we see in the du'as of the Imam Islam, we talked about the preventative measures, staying away from the sins. We talked about avoiding that love of the dunya. The last thing that Imam Islam talks about is the idea of staying away from fakhr. Fakhr in the Arabic language means that when somebody becomes boastful and prideful over what they have, they lose their humility. And for example, in one of the du'as, again, the Imam talks for isma. He says, وَعَصِمْنِي, oh Allah, protect me. وَعَصِمْنِي مِنْ أَنْ أَظُنَّ بِذِي عَدَمٍ خَسَاسًا أو أَظُنَّ بِصَاحِبِ ثَرْوَةٍ فَضْلًا. He says, oh Allah, don't ever make it be the case that if there's somebody who doesn't have what I have, then somehow I feel like I'm better than they are. Or that if somebody has something from the dunya, like, I don't know, they have a title, they have, certain possessions, and I think that, okay, that's a sign of greatness for them. That's not what I want to measure greatness on. And I don't want to see myself in that position as well. I don't want to be part of that game, right? And then he says that, فَإِنَّ الشَّرِيفَ مَنْ شَرَفْتَهُ طَاعَتَكَ وَالْعَزِيزَ مَنْ أَعَزْتَهُ عِبَادَتَكَ. Meaning that, oh Allah, the one who is really noble is the one who you have enabled to be able to worship you and obey you. And the one who's really, precious is the one who you have made precious by being dedicated towards your worship. One time the Imam alayhi salam, he wanted to go for Hajj. This story, again, you probably heard of it, but from this perspective, let's look at it. He wants to go for Hajj, and so he joins with a caravan. And when he joins with a caravan, they don't know who he is. So he says that, I want to be with you. I want to be one of the khadim, one of the servants, one of the people who serves others. When you go for Hajj, then there's always those people who they, for 3 weeks, they're just on their feet the whole time. And they're cooking, they're serving, they're cleaning, they're just taking care of the other Hajis, and they do so much hard work. So he became one of those people. And as they were traveling along for the Hajj, it's a long journey. So then what happens is that somebody comes into the caravan, and he sees somebody there, and so he asks the people, he says that, who's that person there? Because it's kind of maybe jogs his memory. I feel like I know him. So they tell him that, well, we don't know who he is. He just came to us and he said that, that I want to join you, but on the condition that I'm allowed to serve. And he goes near to him and he says that, do you realize who the person is that you've been ordering around this whole time? Who you've been telling to do this thing and that thing? That's Ali ibn al-Hussein. That's the great-grandson of the Prophet. And everyone, there's like the commotion in the pilgrim group, and they all sort of, get really flustered. They go to the Imam, they start kissing his hands and his feet. Again, these are Muslims, right? They don't necessarily have awareness of the position of the Imam as the Imam, but they understand, this is a great person. They say that, woe be to us, like we've been doing this to you, like we're going to hell because of the way that we've been treating you. Please forgive us. So Imam tells them that no, this is the way I do things. I refuse to be part of a caravan. He tells them, one time I was with a caravan where they didn't let me do anything because they knew I was the descendant of the Prophet. But this is my pleasure, this is my honor to be able to serve you in this way. That's the type of attitude that the Imam had. So we see on one hand that the Imam is praying that, oh Allah, protect me from having fakhr, and then practically he's doing these things to make sure that he avoids that type of thing. Right? This is a huge example for us. What do we do? Like the spirituality of the Ahlul Bayt is one which involves not just that time when you're pressing that button, okay, I want to be spiritual right now. It involves a lifestyle of taking what God gives us and seeing it as an amana and seeing, what can I do to serve others with it? What do we do for that? Right? How much time do we dedicate for that? Are we doing it? Are we looking at the best things that we have and seeing what we can give to others? Or are we saying that, no, okay, that spare stuff, after I'm done with all that, I'm going to take all the good stuff for myself and then take the other stuff and give it to others? Right? These are deep questions that we have to ask. I'm sure the Imam alayhi salam, could have maybe said that, okay, I want to have the most spiritual experience, so I'll be alone on this journey. And he could have gone alone. But he takes that trouble, he goes with others because this is the way of true spirituality. It's one which involves being with others, serving them. These are the type of examples we see in the words and the life of the Imam alayhi salam. May Allah Ta'ala help us to understand these beautiful and great teachings and these examples and help us to apply them in our lives. Please recite salawat. Tonight, we want to once again commemorate the events of the martyrdom of Imam Sajad alayhi salam, and also revisit some of the painful events that took place around this time in the calendar. We know that the caravan of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, the caravan of the prisoners, is being taken towards Sham. So let us send our salams upon them and visit them on this evening. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdillah. Sallallahu alayka ya ibn Rasulillah. Sallallahu alaykum ya Ahl Bayt al-Nubuwah. وموضع الرسالة ومختلف الملائكة. Peace and blessings be upon our Master, the Chief of Martyrs, our beloved Imam Hussein. Peace and blessings be upon him and upon his noble family and his companions. Peace and blessings be upon our beloved Imam Sajad Zainul Abidin. Peace and blessings be upon Sayyida Zainab. Peace and blessings be upon the caravan of prisoners. How difficult it must have been for them going towards Sham. When Imam Sajad alayhi salam was asked what was the most difficult part of all the events, he could have described so many things. He could have talked about the martyrdom of his brothers. He could have talked about the martyrdom of his cousin Qasim. He could have talked about the martyrdom of his uncle Abbas. He could have talked about the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. But instead he says 3 times, Asham, Asham, Asham. They say that when the caravan was nearing Sham, the ladies of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam, they were suffering very much. They knew what it would be like to enter a big city where the people had gathered to celebrate the victory of the army over prisoners. What did they request from Shimr the Jawshan la'natullahi alayhi? All they wanted was some decency. All they wanted was some privacy. All they wanted was for the eyes of the onlookers to be diverted from them. After all, they were the women of the Ahlul Bayt, the women of purity, from the family of Rasulullah. Kulthum asked Shimr, is there anything you can do? Can you take the heads upon the spears and make them go away from us so that people will be distracted? Can you take us into the city from one of the ways which is not populated so the people will not be able to look at us? Instead, Shimr, the hard-hearted, the criminal, what does he do? He takes them from the main thoroughfare into the city of Damascus. He orders that the heads atop the spear be held upright. And he orders that they be held upright right in the middle, where all the women and children have been gathered. When they get into the city, they are saying to them, these are the prisoners, these are the captives. One of them goes to the daughter of Imam Hussein. He asks her, tell me, what captives are you all from? What tribe do you belong to? She says that we are the Sabaya of Ali Muhammad. We are the captives of the family of Muhammad. Don't you recognize us? This is the day that we're remembering the burial of Imam Sajad alayhi salam, the one who used to cry out in the night in his munajat. What would he say to Allah? He would cry out, Ila hatta mata, ila mata. أقول لك العتبى مرة بعد أخرى. Oh Allah, oh my God, how many times will I cry out to you? I have repented, O Allah. I'm not going to go back to what I did. But then ثم لا تجد عندي صدقا ولا وفاء. Oh Allah, I said this to you, but then you did not find me to be faithful to my promise. You did not find me to be truthful to my words. فَوَغَوْثَهُ وَغَوْثَهُ وَغَوْثَهُ. Oh Allah, come to my help, come to my help, come to my help. These cries will no longer be heard from the house of Sajad alayhi salam. History says that there was a large crowd that had gathered to accompany Imam Sajad's body to be buried in the grave in Jannatul Baqi'. There were his followers, his family members, the scholars who recognized the greatness of the Imam's knowledge and his scholarship. But let's remember for a moment another funeral that had to take place in the darkness of the night with only 7 people accompanying the body. When Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was with the body of his dear wife Fatima al-Zahra, he was the one who dug the grave. He was the one who lowered the body into the grave. He was the one who recited the janazah prayer. He is the one who filled the grave with the dirt. He is the one who's now sitting there alone, crying out, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulallah. Oh Rasulullah, you had given me this trust in my custody, but now I am returning this trust you have given me to you. Fatima alayha salam has been taken away from us. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. We ask Allah Ta'ala to accept this majlis from us and to accept this grief and mourning. We ask Allah Ta'ala to accept all of our intentions and to purify our hearts by the means of our remembrance of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. We ask Allah Ta'ala to make us and our children to be the true followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, to take them as our role models and our guides. We ask Allah Ta'ala to bless all the marhumeen, especially Mirza Muhammad Qasim and Mirza Abdul Jawad and Mir Alam Ali Khan and Mir Subhan Ali Hajar Begum and Gohar Sultan Bilqis Begum. If there was any reward in this majlis, we ask Allah to convey this reward to them with the barakah of a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein. From Karbala, Karbala, Karbala to Karbala, 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 I left my heart in Karbala. From Karbala, Karbala, Karbala to Karbala, 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 I left my heart in Karbala, in Karbala, in Karbala. From Karbala, Karbala, Karbala to Karbala, 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 I I left my heart in Karbala, in Karbala, in Karbala. The luminous moonlight in the way, the rising sun that brightens the day. Heaven without you would be inflamed. You're the heaven in Karbala. Your visitor offer you their hands. Enemies will never understand. How can the water lose to the sand? How can the thirst win in Karbala? Why heaven is open, Ya Hussein? Why angels descending, Ya Hussein? Why they are residing in Karbala, in Karbala, in Karbala. From Karbala, Karbala, Karbala to Karbala, Karbala, Karbala. I left my heart in Karbala, in Karbala, in Karbala. Karbala, Karbala, Karbala to Karbala, Karbala, Karbala. I left my heart in Karbala, in Karbala, in Karbala. The hand of God that nurtures the young, speaking for Allah, you are the tongue, separating his right from the wrong, elevated in Karbala, the ship that sails swiftly through the waves, and whoever boards your ship is safe, aiming from the punishment of the grave. Whoever mourned you in Karbala, in Karbala, in Karbala. When will we meet again, Ya Hussein? When under your dome will I grieve again? From Najaf will I walk to Karbala, to Karbala, to Karbala. From Karbala, Karbala, Karbala to Karbala, Karbala, Karbala. I left my heart in Karbala, in Karbala, in Karbala. The hand of God that nurtures the young, speaking for Allah, you were the tongue, separating his right from the wrong, elevated in Karbala, the ship that sails swiftly through the waves, and whoever boards your ship is safe, aiming from the punishment of the grave. Whoever mourned you in Karbala, when will we meet again, Ya Hussein? When under your dome will I grieve again? From Najaf will I walk to Karbala, to Karbala, to Karbala. From Karbala, Karbala, Karbala to Karbala, Karbala, Karbala. I left my heart in Karbala, in Karbala, in Karbala. Take me to Karbala, leave me there. Take me to Karbala, leave me there. Take me to Karbala, leave me there, leave me there. Take me to Karbala, leave me there. Take me to Karbala, leave me there. Take me to Karbala, leave me there, leave me there. Hussein, Lord, Hussein, Lord, Hussein, Lord, Hussein, Lord. صلى الله على محمد وآل محمد.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى جميع شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام على التسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أعوانك وأنصارك ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم صل على محمد